All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And thank you, everyone. I can hear you out there, and I love that you are out there. It is our Tuesday show, and it has been supercharged for you in all kinds of ways. Yes, we've tweaked our technical intelligence, and I'm hoping that is going to produce an even better viewer-listener experience than normal. We will, I think, depend on viewer-listener feedback to find out about that. That involves audio levels and all the rest of the stuff we've been tweaking. Tony is here helping us through that process.
Thanks, Tony.
And Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
And she is helping us through other processes. She is very vigilant, as you are well aware. If she can pull me over and issue a ticket for any reason, she does. She, what's the problem, Tony?
Is that a tag on your shirt? I see, like, where your headphones are.
It's a tag, you're right. It's a, you know what it is? It's a tag because these headphones look, I don't need to explain it. It's a tag. Yes, you're right. Thank you for catching it. My God. Kim, why didn't you catch that? Can I ask you? You're usually the,
I'm
you're usually
having daydreams of pulling you over.
I guess you were thinking about other stuff that you could give me a hard time about, weren't you, Kim? That's what was going on.
That's what was happening.
I am just saying that I know what's going on. You're always thinking, how can I bust him? How can I bust him?
I blame you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this tension, though, that you're sensing is the thing that has created an atmosphere of excellence on this show. I'm wearing my Atmosphere of Excellence T-shirt, which I did get from the store. I had to pay for it also. The Mark Thompson Show T-shirt. I like this, the maroon. Our merch store, grab it while you can, because we may be changing merch companies. Courtney's part of that process. She's evaluating. It's harder than you think. Getmarkmerch.com is where you can get all, and you can get the chit phrasing. That's Kim's phrase, and we could try ignoring it, sir, is one of my favorite mugs. We could try ignoring it, sir. Yeah, we have a couple of those. So if you're into merch, and who isn't? There it is. We could try ignoring it, sir. Mug, yeah. We could try ignoring it, sir. Yeah, exactly. So, in fact, I'm drinking from the We Could Try Ignoring It, Sir mug today. We have the mugs and the cups, and you can never have too many mugs and cups. I am a living proof of that. So when we moved to our house, because our house and neighborhood burned, we had to move, and I like to say that because it engenders sympathy in the audience, you see. That's why I say that deliberately. Okay, and now
Is there violin music we could
thank you.
usher in? Could we?
I'm playing for the sympathy.
Some sad music.
Courtney hired an organizational group. Like they are, they're good at organizing stuff, and so they came in and they organized. I left the room for maybe an hour. They had organized all the mugs that had been salvaged from the old house. And they had organized them in this weird way. How did they organize them again? They organized them from organize it by topic. By topic, right. So if a mug was like from from NBC or Paramount?
NBC or Paramount. Or
yeah.
You were like travel mugs.
Yeah.
Travel.
Yeah.
Entertainment.
Hi, Courtney.
Yeah, that's Courtney, everybody,
Hi.
and she is.
I only come in for the mug conversation.
What is it? But now that you're here, what is the story on the rest of our merch? Are we gonna? We're awaiting certain things.
Yeah. We really. We're waiting on what platform we're gonna end up on.
So, but people can still get this.
Yes.
This attractive T-shirt if they want.
You can still get T-shirts and mugs.
Okay.
And we have a couple new ones up. So.
Yeah. A Courtney cameo. That's exactly right, says MG. Yeah, it was fun.
I know. Yeah.
I miss Courtney's crime segment. We talked about you giving an update on the there's been some updates in the world of crime.
Yes, the Idaho murder specifically.
Yeah.
I think we have been watching this horrific case since the beginning because it happened when we started the crime segment. So I'll have to come back when I'm not here to talk about mugs.
Yes, thank you for making a special mug mission. Randy says, when do we get to see Courtney on camera someday?
No.
The answer is if you come to a meetup. She does show up at the meetups on camera.
Yep.
And we are overdue for our 100K meetup. We said when we hit 100K, we would...
You put the plaque up behind you. I see it looks like it's highlighted.
That's great.
Yeah, the plaque is there.
I was going to ask about the plaque.
Yeah. The
God, I should really watch this show.
The unboxing yesterday, Courtney.
I am sadly gonna have to wrap you up, Courtney. After that,
Wow.
My God!
I don't know.
I'm going to be back to talk about some updates.
Yes, if when you
Karen
have time
Reed as well.
Yes.
So. But until then, it was nice to say hi to everybody.
Yes, it's good good to have a little greeting from you. So thank you, Courtney. Everybody. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. Wow. We've noticed something in YouTube. We've noticed that, and we're worried that there may be because we're not singing from the Trump hymnal, that we can actually be played down by the algorithm. That is to say, it can depress this show's numbers. So it's really important to do two things, I would say. Rally around the shows that you enjoy, the shows that you derive some pleasure from, the shows that you derive some information from, whatever it might be. I think you should rally around them, keep track of them, support them. This show among them, I hope, but you should just be aware that things are changing in America and you're seeing any voices of dissension being sanctioned, eliminated, or effectively forced into the shadows. And that can happen on any platform that is, in the public sphere. There are ways in which I'm trying to choose my words a little carefully here, but there are ways in which you can thrive. Generally, that's behind a paywall. I was having this conversation this morning with another creator, and I don't want to put this show behind a paywall. The idea is that we are an NPR PBS model. We're crowdfunded. We would not exist without our funders, without the Patreon, PayPal, without the super stickers, super chats. We would not exist. There's not enough money on this platform to sustain us, just to state it bluntly. But we need this platform because what we get from the platform puts us into the black. So I'm concerned that I'd have to go behind a paywall. I don't want to do that. I want to keep this show free, and I want to keep it on YouTube, and I want to keep it on podcasts, which it is. But I would encourage you, leave my show out if you want. But if you are deriving pleasure from other shows, deriving information, things that you care about, we need to support, because independent media is the way that will likely be able to push back on a lot of what's going on and be able to get information out. The mainstream legacy media is already pre-surrendering to what's happening in Washington. They have much bigger deals in place that they want to see follow through. I've given you the story of Paramount CBS. They have a big merger that has to happen. They've been forced into a court and legal adversarial relationship with the Trump administration because the amount of money that's been sought by the Trump administration is so high. It's $20 billion. But you saw in the case of ABC, they just tapped out, write the check for $15 million. No big deal. And this is being played out throughout the legacy media world with the LA Times, the Washington Post. I actually see them as doing some great investigative reporting right now, despite the fact that they have kind of a stink on them because of that whole editorial mess with Bezos pulling the editorial that wouldn't endorse a presidential candidate. So, I mean, that's just a sense of what's happening with legacy media. But my message is just, if you like a show, and again, it lands with you in a way that gives you a positive, then I think you need to try to do something positive to support that show. So share it, support it financially, whatever it might be. Beth Farmer, stay free. Scary times. Thank you for the $20 super chat.
Big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to Beth Farmer. And I appreciate everybody who supports this show. I actually didn't intend to get off on this whole thing about it. Wasn't a fundraiser thing, but just because it was something I was speaking about this morning, because it's a real contemporary concern for creators, as they call them, the people on YouTube and on independent media. Keep it rolling. We need you. Karen Cooper, big shout out, and thank you for the $10 super chat. Really appreciate that. So, and again, this is the weird thing. I see this, boycott media, says Scott Healy. Boycott media that is giving in to MAGA pressure. The problem with that is it's a little more complicated than giving in to MAGA pressure. I just gave you the Washington Post example. The Washington Post, again, Bezos attended the inaugural, gave in to MAGA pressure, if you want to call it that, and I think it's fair to call it that, and didn't produce that op-ed, which was to endorse Kamala Harris. The truth is, though, that if you look past that, you see some really great work being done by the Washington Post. I mean, again, even just today, they have exclusives at the Washington Post that are really worth something. So I would, again, I still subscribe to the Washington Post because I think the reporting done there, and even some of the op-eds that are still done there, are really good, and they're worth it. So, again, I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I do think that there is good work being done across the spectrum, but I definitely would, I would support those things on independent media that you care about. So, super sticker from Gordon. Thank you for the $5 super sticker, sir.
Big shout
Appreciate
out.
that. And Nancy Boyd with a $10 super sticker.
Big shout out.
Wow, thank you. I feel a sneeze coming on shortly, so if I have to kill this mic for a second, I will. If you want to support us through Patreon and PayPal, go through the MarkThompsonShow.com, and you can click through to Patreon and PayPal. Tony's got it up on the screen. That's what it'll look like, the MarkThompsonShow.com. You have to put the Mark Thompson Show. Because if you only put the Mark Thompson Show, you just put Mark Thompson Show, you end up at a ventriloquist's website. And I'm sure he's great, but it doesn't help us. So it's the MarkThompsonShow.com, and you'll have the merch and click-throughs to Patreon and PayPal. And I was mentioning yesterday, what is that, Tony?
Oh, just saying, I put the link in the chat.
Oh, the link is in the chat. There you go.
Not just a ventriloquist, a Christian ventriloquist.
Yeah, Christian ventriloquist, right.
Listen to
the best kind?
Bible stories. Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, that could be wildly entertaining. Jesus and Mary are talking, you know what I mean? But they're not really talking. It's the guy talking, but he can change his voice. I don't know if that's what it is, but I'm just saying, could be. Katie Lynn says, I still read WashPo. I've boycotted Amazon since Bezos nixed the endorsement. Mad respect to Katie Lynch, who just wrote that, because I think the boycotting of Amazon is much harder than the boycotting of the Washington Post, if that's your jam. Again, I don't boycott the Washington Post. I still read it. I think there's some great journalism being done there. But to boycott Amazon is to, at this point, I think, make a much longer sort of workaround on getting a lot of the stuff that you want. So good for you for that. Columnist Ruth Marcus just resigned from the Washington Post because of Bezos. Wow. Thank you, Dagwell. I did not know that. We should try to get her on the show, I think. And yet Ruth Marcus just left the Washington Post. Yeah, Jim Riley says it too. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. Super sticker from Jim Slayton for $10. Thank you,
Big shout
sir.
out.
Appreciate that. And super sticker from Marilyn Graham for $10. Wow, it's a big super sticker,
Big
Dad.
shout out.
Yeah. I guess my appeal was heard. I will point out that Dennis Fahey says that I should take up ventriloquism. So what's your problem, Mark? Take up ventriloquism. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You can use your little finger puppets.
Yeah.
You can. Look at
I
you.
do. I've got the.
You're
I've got
already
the,
ready.
I've got the puppets. I have the puppets already. Yeah. Speaking of puppets, we'll check in on Washington and Musk and Trump in a moment. Maybe Trump will censor the Christian ventriloquist by mistake. I love that. Says, who was that? I missed who it was. My first Patreon subscription is for Mark and team. Thank you for all you do, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate that. I quit Meta and Facebook, says Colors of the Wind. Yeah. I mean, there is a, are you doing Mark's Madness this year? Yeah, we are. In fact, the Mark's Madness, this is the Mark's Madness hats that we used to have. I don't think there are any more of them. I think that's a collector's item. The Mark's Madness tournament starts, I think, in a week. I'll ask Albert. He comes in tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's starting in the next few days. But what we'll do is we'll play all the drops that are part of it. If you're new, we play drops off against each other. Drops are things like just things that are.
Girl, you just woo.
Like that would be a drop, and
What?
that would be a drop. The what? But the thing that is happening this year is a lot of the drops that have done really well historically will not be in the tournament. And so, like what won last year,
there's always been in this country 30 to 35% idiots.
That won't be in the tournament this year. It won it last year. So there'll be other drops in the tournament. So you'll have to play the tournament the way we all do. And we will give you the brackets, we'll give you the website and how to do it.
Don't talk to me that way.
Yeah, that'll be perhaps one of the drops. So there are, Mark's Madness is, why are they called drops? Heather Kennedy asks. They're called drops, I think, because they drop in to the show. They're audio clips that are dropped in. And so for that reason, we call them drops. I miss Jim Avila, says Becky E. And let me tell you, I have great news about Jim Avila.
What?
Jim Avila will be joining this show regularly on Fridays with Michael Shore once again. Yes.
Yay!
The former White House correspondent for ABC, the former senior national correspondent for ABC News, joining us again with his political perspectives that are informed by all of that journalism in Washington and worldwide. You know, he's traveled the world from war zones with presidential emissaries across time zones, across countries. He is truly terrific in his perspective. We don't always agree on everything. I have, as you know, a different take on things sometimes, but Jim is always so well informed, and he'll be a great addition after he couldn't be with us for a while because he was, working, but various things have happened to free him up, and he wasn't, let go or anything, but he's now been freed to join us, which is really great.
Oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah, so Jim Avila on Fridays. I like the Larry King drop. Tell me about the scene, says...
What can you tell us about the scene?
Yeah, Larry King will probably be in the Mark's Madness.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Exactly. So if you liked him, you'll hear from him. Market is down again today. Yes, indeed. Let's get into a little bit of what's happening market-wise with this new president.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The new president, Donald Trump, is doing things radically and quickly. He has a doubling of tariffs ordered up for Canadian steel and aluminum. He wants to double it up to 50%. I mean, this is an intense leaning into this policy of tariffs. The actions, they say, are in response to Ontario Premier Doug Ford's imposition of a new tax on electricity supplied to 3 U.S. states. We shared that news with you yesterday. But Ford's action was a response to Trump's earlier announcement of tariffs on foreign steel and aluminum, and that's scheduled to take place at noon today. It's already underway. So in other words, he was responding to Trump. Trump is responding to him, and so it goes. Based on Ontario, Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I, says Trump, have instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff to 50% on all steel and aluminum coming to the United States from Canada, one of the highest tariffing nations anywhere in the world. This will go into effect tomorrow morning, March 12th, which is tomorrow morning. Despite Trump's claim that Canada's average tariff of 3.8% is the same, pretty much, as the United States tariff. That's according to the World Trade Organization database. So again, when Trump tells you that Canada is the highest tariffing nation in the world, you know, even as you read the statement, that it's likely a lie, and a lie by a lot. And indeed, it is. I mean, there is, of course, Wall Street reaction to this. The S&P down, the Dow down, and those who are looking at the economy with some sense of doom expect that this cycle of tariffs is going to create a very, very tough economy moving forward for America. It will likely include recession, to the point that Trump has tacitly acknowledged that in the interviews he did with the mainstream media, and in that interview he did with his favorite cuddle bunny, Bartiromo. Maria Bartiromo, is it?
Cuddle bunny.
Yeah, I mean, she's just like, Mr. President, you're so handsome, everything you do, and because America is doing so well right now. But do you worry about recession at all?
They're calling it a Trumpsession, which I think is great because it will be completely of his own making. Parmenio says that if the election were held today, Democrats could probably win on ending the trade war nonsense. I don't know about you, Mark, but I disagree. We knew tariffs were coming. He talked about tariffs during the whole election. There's nothing different between what he said and what he's doing.
I think Kim's exactly right. I think the coalition that was showing up at the polls for Trump, they respond to a bunch of different things. The MAGA people, of course, respond to the tough talk, the smack talk, put America first. We're going to tariff them like they tariff us, even though that's not what's happening. We're not tariffed this way. The idea that, I remember I heard, was it last week when he was saying there's a 200% tariff on American automobiles going into India? That's completely invented. There possibly is no tariff on American imports to India. I really don't know what I know. I knew when I heard it, it was BS. But he said it, and man, he lies like nobody else I've ever met. And so there's a part of that coalition that really responds to that. But you're right, Kim, that tariffs were well advertised by this president. And they were well advertised and explained as inflationary.
And economists told us exactly what would happen.
Exactly. So
it should come as no surprise. So if voters knew ahead of time, I don't know why the outcome would be any different now. I love this from Rich.
Let me just take a quick peek. The difference between Canada and Mexico, says Rich. Claudia repositions Trump's binky placating him. Claudia, who's Claudia? I'm sorry.
Claudia from Mexico, Sheinbaum. Is
of course, Sheinbaum. Yeah. She's so good with him.
Yeah.
Claudia repositioned Trump's binky, placating him while Trudeau locks horns with him, and that will gain nothing. Yeah, the way to handle Trump is still being figured out by a lot of world leaders, but I have to say that Mexico and their president has been fairly effective in producing whatever diplomatic sleight of hand is necessary to handle Trump. The idea, for example, that you are going to put 10,000 troops at the border. She's going to put troops at their border, deporting and sending to America a couple of these drug cartel kingpins. These are things that give Trump a brag, which is what he really needs, and can help smooth over what is obviously adversarial footing that he wants with Mexico. Robert Martin, so isn't Trump just following Cohen's training? If someone sues you for $1 million, you sue them for 10 million. Tit for tat, always go bigger. Yeah. I mean, he's doing that. I get it. It's the Roy Cohn playbook. The problem is he started it. So when you say if someone sues you for, in other words, if you are the aggrieved party, you come back even harder. But in this case, Trump is the one doing the aggressive move that produces this whole back and forth. He's the aggressor. Trump's tariffs are self-inflicted wounds that will hurt American consumers, says Jim. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, again, this is taking the most successful economy in the world, which was the U.S. economy 6 weeks ago, and destroying it. Now, I'll speak to the end game here, and then I've got Branco coming up in just a couple of minutes. He's a brilliant investigative journalist, and I want to talk to him about Social Security. We'll talk to him about Ukraine. He's got great reporting, and again, he'll be with us in just a second. Of course, David Cay Johnston, top of the next hour. But the end game here is fascinating. Trump's going to help out Elon by buying a Tesla that he doesn't drive, says Dan Hagwell.
That's the latest.
Yeah, I mean, Trump doesn't drive, and he's buying a Tesla from Elon. I mean, he may have America buy a bunch of them. I mean, this is the kind of deal that's being made by this president, right? And it's so bizarre because at the same time he does that. Thanks for the show, says Bob Handy. I'll get back to that thought in a second. Bob Handy 91 with a $20 super chat. Thanks for the show. Miss you being on the radio waves in San Francisco, but glad you are on YouTube. Bob Handy, a big shout out to you and big thanks to you.
Big shout out.
And I miss being on the radio. This show did come from the radio. That's what Bob Handy's talking about. It's very important to keep independent voices airing. Love what you do. Kim and the gang do every single day. I love what you and Kim and the gang do every single day. She says, thank you so much. Vilma was that? That's just, Vilma's an OG, like one of our originals. I was just going to quickly note the end game here. You understand that the idea here is to wreck the economy, okay? So this idea, well, it's bad for the economy, it's wrecking the economy. Yeah, that's the idea. Because from the ashes rise authoritarian figures. That is what gives so much power to these authoritarians. And so if the plan is to dismantle government and to wreck the economy, it will open the door to someone who can make everything right, to restore order. It is articulated in the Project 2025 plan. This dismantling the government, it is truly something that has been written about, spoken about, and openly shared. So this shouldn't be a surprise to us. It's yet so reckless and so abhorrent that one can't imagine that it's really going to happen. And the other thing you can't imagine is that these GOP senators and Congress people would all sit there and let it happen. Let this guy, Elon Musk, just slide into the government and let these 19 to 26-year-olds dismantle everything, fire everyone recklessly. It's astounding. Just can't believe that it's happening. But it is. And Congress, I think, is the most bizarre part of this. And yet when you see Elon Musk and all that money and the way he uses it, he threatens primaries and essentially removing people who have gotten used to that power. When you see that as part of the plan, you realize, wow, this is how quickly the GOP Congress people and senators were cowed. They are worried about losing that power, and they legitimately should worry about it. Is Jesus back yet? Asks Silicon Valley Blogs. No. But what I was going to say about Elon Musk is that it's funny to me that Trump has made a centerpiece of his new administration getting rid of the mandate for electric cars. By the way, he said that in his speech before the joint session. And there is no mandate. There is no plan for everything go electric. But it is true that the Biden administration had put in place and put in motion plans to remove a lot of the combustion engines that are, for example, populating the postal service deliveries, et cetera. That was all going to be replaced by electric vehicles. So it's weird to me. He's really, he's a drill baby drill guy. He's all about combustion engines. He's undoing all of the stuff that related to electric vehicles that was done by the Biden administration. But his best buddy, the guy who's destroying government for him, Elon Musk, he runs an electric car company that's now in trouble. And as a result, Trump is buying an electric car. And it's so performative and absurd that, but it's the theater. We, the people, must put a stop to this as soon as possible, says War Crimes. Yeah, and just, of course, that's true. And I encourage you to get active in many of the ways that we've articulated. The calls is a great way to start, anyway, calls to Washington. I've mentioned to you before that right-wing calls outnumber left-wing calls 8-1 in Washington, typically. So if you're moderate or left, and you certainly don't like what's going on now, you do yourself a great favor by at least registering your complaint. I was going to, somebody sent a note about, here it is, from Carolyn Morey. Thank you, Carolyn, for writing to us. Our address is the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. So
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Here it was, do you know, let me just see the part that is, just saw on, it's a lot here, but it's a short, kind of a short email. So here's Carolyn's email. Mark, just saw on Yahoo News that Musk has invited his private equity buddies to come in and do God knows what at Social Security. What if in their routing through Social Security, they wiped out everyone's work history and how much you paid in? Hopefully they have a good backup system. There was a reason FDR and Congress at that time thought it best that the government administrate the plan. Do you know it costs? So that's a legit, I think, this is a very legitimate criticism of the way they're doing this, but there are a lot of legitimate criticisms as well. This gets to more of the Tesla stuff. Did you know it costs between $82 and $87 million to launch a SpaceX Falcon rocket and $90 million for a Falcon Heavy launch so that Elon can fantasize about colonizing Mars? One last thing. Here's the Tesla part. Tesla sold over 8,600 cars at 4 facilities in Canada in one weekend and collected, because of that number, it reached a certain threshold where he gets a rebate, collected $48 million, did Tesla, in rebates. It was the last week to get rebates. So in other words, last week to get rebates, sales are way down, but suddenly, over one weekend, Tesla sells 8,600 cars at just 4 Tesla facilities in Canada and collects $48 million in rebates. The Canadian government is going to investigate. But you realize the fraud of Elon Musk, and you also realize the ways in which he's gaming the system. I've said this before. Elon Musk is about the steal and he's about the power, and he's doing both. He went after the very government agencies that were regulating him. He went first after USAID. They were involved in an investigation of his Starlink and the turning off of Starlink for the Ukrainians as a result of a deal he'd made with the Russians. That investigating was ongoing, and he went right after USAID, fired the people at USAID who were involved in that investigation, and has essentially gutted the agency. Then he moved to the FAA, same day, I think. I mean, he was doing it all at once. The FAA. What does the FAA have with Elon Musk? Well, you saw the rocket blow up. We have video of the rocket blowing up. Did you see it, Tony, that I sent to you? The rocket blowing, you didn't, really?
Must have been in the day I wasn't in.
No, the video I sent to you in last night. You didn't get it? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I thought I sent it and I didn't. Anyway, he blew up a rocket because they have to blow up rockets if they're off their launch path or whatever it might be. Yeah. And when he does that, traffic has to be rerouted, and flights are canceled. And indeed, there was a flight on its way to Mexico, and it had to be canceled and go back to where it was coming from where it was coming, and there is even video of the debris of the rocket being blown up. I thought I sent it to Tony, but maybe I didn't. In any case, hold on. You have it, yeah. Their fines. Do you look at any of my mail, Tony?
Thanks, Tony.
The fines associated with this are real, and they come out of the FAA. But guess what he did? He went after the FAA, got rid of the guy who was fining him, top guy at FAA, pressured the hell out of him, made his life hell, got rid of him, and now he's gutting the rest of the FAA. And this goes on, EPA, etc., IRS. Here it is. They're on their way to Punta Cana, and there is the space debris. I mean, I say space debris. That's the launch debris from Elon Musk. They had to turn around because Elon's rocket blew up, and they were that close to that debris. So, again, Musk is getting all of this credit. Thank you, Tony, for
Thanks, Tony.
For being this genius, etc. He's not. I mean, he's a genius in some ways, but he's also a mess. But he's captured a presidency, and in his wealth, he is going after not only government institutions, but the courts as well. In Wisconsin, he is funding a judge there, trying to get a judge in. Right now, there's a judge who is going to be ruling on regulations related to driverless cars, and he's trying to get that in Wisconsin for his company, for Tesla. And he's trying now to elect a different judge, a right-wing judge, who he's funding. The campaign for that judge is being funded by Musk so that he can essentially buy that judgeship for himself in Wisconsin. So again, you see the power of money across the spectrum and how his plans and strategies really involve self-enrichment and power. Social Security sent me a letter the other day listing my earnings history, says Lee. Yeah.
Yeah, they're advocating. I've seen people going on the Social Security website and printing that information out just in case somehow it's lost.
I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. They now are saying there have been so many cuts at Social Security that there will be interruptions in payments to so many who deserve that money. I mean, we paid it in. Why shouldn't we get it out? Me too, Gordon. I printed out my Social Security work history, says Vicky in Sausalito. Chico Eric says, with a $20 super chat, give the, quote, Republican Party the credit for all of this instead of, quote, Trump or, quote, Musk. Credit where credit is due. The Republican Party has permitted it, I'd say yes. But there was a Republican Party before Trump and Musk, and we didn't see as much of this. I mean, I think we saw other stuff, and I'd say that the voter suppression that we saw, which was at the hands of the Republican Party, which has been taken to a high art, that is something that Republicans have refined election after election. Call it a Republican recession. Don't give the party separation from their leaders, says Chico Eric. Oh, I see what you're saying. So give them the credit for all of this.
Instead of Trumpsession or Trumpression.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yeah. Thank you, Chico Eric. Yeah. It is indeed the Republican Party that permits this. But let me also say, I mean, these tariffs are Trump's deal. I don't think you'd have Musk giving you tariffs. I don't think you'd have any GOP, anybody who knows anything around the world of economics. There is a widespread agreement that these tariffs are lunacy. So those are Trumpian. That was his big thing. He doesn't really get it, right? So he is someone who's creating the kind of economic havoc, I think, on his own that others are dealing with. And I think it's a process. Donna Lynn is asking, how do we end this madness without hoping the Reaper finds them first? Yeah, I think really what you're looking at is incremental inroads, which is probably the best we can hope for at this point. I'd look for incremental inroads. And I do think that the economy tanking, oddly, while they want it on some level or don't care, because it does create an atmosphere of such great chaos that an authoritarian can ride in and say, I'm going to restore order here. I mean, that supposedly is the plan. I would say that if American politics retains any sense of what it is and has been, it could be politically seriously damaging to Trump. And they need Trump. Trump is the best liar maybe I've ever seen. He is unflappable. He just keeps moving forward. It's the Roy Cohn, definitely the Roy Cohn playbook. And he is the empty vessel that they can pour their philosophy and politics into while they do the real lifting of destroying government. And he surrounded himself with loyalists who will never question a thing he does, and people who are so repulsed by his policies are leaving government in droves. So you end up with a government that is completely Trumpian. It's this internal decision you have to make, I'm sure, if you're in government right now. I mean, A, you're likely to be fired because they're trying to get rid of all government employees. But B, can you make a difference? Can you stop a little bleeding? And if so, does that incentivize you to remain in government? These are questions I'm sure that a lot of government employees are asking. Most of them are really earnest and are not pursuing some intense agenda of the sort that we've seen. Quick logistical question. You sent Branco our link to join us, correct?
Twice now, yeah. And I was just sending him another message just saying, are you coming?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, done some great reporting on Social Security, et cetera. So I'm hoping we get him. But if we don't, we talk to David Cay Johnston anyway, top of the hour, and we'll get some answers from him. Kurt writes, I'm 99% sure Musk has the ability to remove control of his driverless cars and use them to kill people he does not like. Wow. I mean, look up the Angela Chow incident. She and hundreds of people have died in Teslas. So the Angela Chow incident, she is the sister of Mitch McConnell's wife. And they are very, very wealthy. I think the family of import-export impresario. And she ended up drowning in a lake on their property, as I recall. She couldn't open the door. And I haven't heard that it was, and I don't mean to, I mean, I haven't heard that it was deliberate, but my God, I mean, the notion somehow that, you know, he could then make it so you couldn't open the door or use his driverless cars to kill people he doesn't like. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at this point, I mean, I never would have thought that this guy who is completely undeputized, utterly without credentials, never has served in government or had a day of public service in his life, never would I've thought that that guy could get into the American government and be permitted to dismantle everything. So I don't put anything beyond him, but by the same token, I don't, that seems like a reach. But you need to keep electric cars out of the lake, says Jennifer. That's true, too.
That might be the better answer there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, she was drunk, and she drove into a lake. So I don't know if Elon Musk got her drunk also. So I think he's doing enough damage. I don't have to tag him also with, deliberately killing Elaine Chow's sister. Right. But I like how you think. It's something out of the box. All right, so hopefully he'll join, and if he doesn't, we will we move along. And there is much to get to, so I'm glad in a way that we have a second. Katie Porter in California, all of you in California, she is now entering the California governor's race. It's a governor's race that might include who? Kamala Harris, right? Yeah. She became a social media celebrity, of course, with the whiteboard at those congressional hearings, and she's grilled these CEOs in those hearings. She's brilliant. I think she's been on this show, and the field is crowded. Kamala Harris hasn't ruled out seeking the governorship, but she hasn't declared that she's in the hunt. It is said by Jack Pitney, who's a political scientist at Claremont McKenna College, if Kamala Harris gets in the race, there are very few politicians who would want to take her on. Mm-hmm. She'd be likely, he says, to win the Democratic nomination, and Democrats are likely to win the governorship. So if Harris steps in, she'd be tough to beat. I think she'd have a lot of institutional money behind her. That's something that would be hard to push up against. But I also feel as though Harris also has name recognition, perhaps. I love Katie Porter. I'd love to see her.
So here's the question from Gordon: who do you want for governor, Katie or Kamala?
No, I'm Katie Porter. I really am. I am. But I don't know. The Democrats. I would say this to Democrats, because I'd like to think I'm nonpartisan, but now the partisanship is hard to keep aside because GOP, you guys just seem like I don't know what's going on. You're letting the fox into the hen house, and it's a slaughter. But I would say that the Democrats have to get their act together in California. California is a great state. As you know, I love California for the diversity. I love California for the topography, the way there are mountains and coastlines. And I love California for the free thinking. I love California for the freedoms. Now you may, I get it, on any number of these things, you can push back on me. You can push back on me on on masks, on anti-vax, and all of that. But what I would say is that the Democrats have dropped the ball with high-speed rail, for example. It's a mess. I mean, how can you justify what's going on with high-speed rail? It's a great idea, a high-speed train from San Francisco to Los Angeles. That's the way it should be. You should be able to get on a train below Market Street, and you should be able to get out of that train underneath Hollywood. But we can't seem to make that happen.
Wasn't it supposed to go from San Diego to San Francisco originally?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Tony's right. They've redrawn the blueprints for how far it's supposed to go over and over and over again. And they've redrawn the bottom line over and over and over again. It just keeps getting more expensive. I blame Democrats in part for that. I mean, in large part, okay? You have to understand that's taxpayer money, and it's just being poured into this boondoggle. It's an absolute obscenity.
It's too expensive.
The expense was understood, even if you doubled the expense at billions of dollars. Was it $34 billion when it started? But the other thing I'd say, and this is interesting, it needs to transport cars. Everyone needs their car on either end. Well, I mean, it's not transporting anybody for a while, but yes, that would be great. As long as it's not happening, we can add whatever we want. But I also feel as though, in general, there's a sense that we're throwing a lot of money at problems in California, and it's not helping. I use the homeless problem as an example. There are billions of dollars that are funneled into this homelessness industrial complex where you vote for the bond measures, you donate taxpayer dollars, and billions go into funding answers to homelessness, increased housing, increased intervention, all of these things. And the homeless situation just keeps getting worse. Not to mention, a lot of that money can't be accounted for. When you show me money that can't be accounted for, I will show you corruption. I'm sorry. I mean, at best, it's incompetence, and at worst, it's corruption. And so we talk about the feds, we talk about California as a massive state, and I think we like to think of it as a place where the directives for the future are more righteous and more laudable than the ones you'll find in Washington and at the federal level. But we have to show that we can handle money in California, and it goes toward at least addressing the problems that we're trying to solve. I don't think we see that. In the case of the high-speed rail, we didn't see it, and we don't see it. And in the case of this homelessness industrial complex that I mentioned, we don't see it. And that's just the beginning. So I'd love to see Katie Porter in there. To me, she recognizes maybe solutions or at least attacks problems in a less institutional way. She seems less captured by the political machine. But for that reason, she might be more of a long shot to actually get into office than would be a Kamala Harris. So, Noe Marie says, Ezra Klein podcast last weekend regarding the path to high-speed rail in under 17 minutes, and it largely has to do with regulations regarding avoiding exploitation and environmental protections. Japan has had this technology in 1959. Yeah, overregulated. Maybe that's it. I mean, rebuilding Pacific Palisades, this area of Los Angeles that has been decimated by fire, you're now hearing the Democratic government in California saying we're going to allow you to work around certain basic restrictions that are associated with environment and building, et cetera. So it is possible to waive some of these restrictions. With high-speed rail, they should have evaluated which ones they can get around, which regulations, which restrictions might they be able to work with and work within, and which ones do they need some relief from. Because if it is about environmental regulations and restrictions, you need to address that problem. It's absurd. I mean, honestly, the high-speed rail situation is absurd. But I put it alongside the homeless problem. The homeless problem is absurd, not because it exists. I understand why homeless people come to California. The weather is better. The services are better. I get it. But the billions that are poured into addressing the homeless issue, you cannot lose track of that money. I want to know where that money went, because the only way you can evaluate how effective a program is to evaluate where the money's going so you can see whether that money is well spent or not. So I see the Democrats in California as having a real issue. Show me you can make it work. Again, your basic values when it comes to the environment, when it comes to the future, when it comes to diversity, I'm with you, okay? But what I'm not about is just throwing money at stuff and then we lose track of where the money went. And the high-speed rail is the one example, and I'd say homelessness is the other example, just from a state funding standpoint. So I think that all started with Katie Porter. So I guess Katie Porter, I'm hoping Katie Porter can produce their, some results that we will see. Mel Gibson has led to a resignation at the Justice Department.
What?
I know. It's incredible. A Justice Department official is saying she was fired. I guess she didn't resign, she was fired after opposing restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights. Elizabeth G. Oyer, the former pardon attorney, says the sequence of events is an alarming departure from long-standing practice, one that put public safety and the department's integrity at risk. Mr. Gibson had lost his gun rights because of a 2011 domestic violence misdemeanor conviction. She says, this is dangerous. This isn't political. This is a safety issue. She then explains that a series of Justice Department discussions about guns and domestic violence and star power ensued from this Gibson situation. And there were a number of high-ranking Justice Department officials who were fired on Friday, and she was one of them.
Yeah.
This is the latest, I should say, in a series, as noted here, of moves by officials who were with the Trump administration and removing or demoting senior career lawyers who play critical roles in department decisions. She was not told why she was dismissed, but as events unfolded, she feared they might lead to her firing. And a Justice Department official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, described the internal deliberations, saying the disagreement over Mel Gibson played no role in the decision to dismiss the pardon attorney. So,
nuts. I mean, does he seem like someone who should have weaponry? No.
Seems like a hothead. But about 2 weeks ago, the woman who, again, was fired, the pardon attorney for the Justice Department, Liz Oyer is her name, she was put on a working group to restore gun rights to people convicted of crimes. That effort was championed by some on the right who maintain that not all people with criminal convictions are dangerous or deserving of being banned from having weapons. Others contend that doing so, banning them, particularly when it comes to people with domestic violence convictions, is the way to go. Anyway, she, again, a pardon attorney at the Justice Department, typically handles requests for clemency, tries to focus on people who can't hire well-connected lawyers to plead their cases to the White House, where the president has a lot of power to grant pardons in federal cases. Mel Gibson gets his guns back, and Liz Oyer is dumped at the Justice Department. That is the bottom line. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court rebuking 19 Republican attorneys general. That's right. The Trump court rejected a lawsuit from 19 Republican-led states seeking to block climate change lawsuits filed against the oil and gas industry. These are in Democratic-led states. It doesn't mean that you're going to prevail, but you're bringing a case. The justices said that they would not hear the Republican effort to challenge Democratic states for using their own courts to sue fossil fuel companies over allegations of misleading the public about environmental risks of their products. So the bottom line here is that this Republican court did rebuff Republican attorneys general. Now, there were dissenting opinions. And as you might imagine, among the dissenters...
I come from regular stock.
Exactly. Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, who's flying a different flag upside down every day, did dissent. Thomas arguing that the court lacks discretion to reject the case at this stage. So he didn't address the lawsuit's merits. He just said, we don't have enough here to reject the case at this stage. We don't, it doesn't apply to the Supreme Court that we have the power to reject this case. The lawsuits were filed by dozens of state and local governments, and they accused the fossil fuel companies of concealing the true impact of their products on climate change. So those suits will be allowed to continue. The big thing that I wanted to get to today, in addition to the economy tanking and tariffs going every which way, is Social Security and the fact that it is on the table so quickly. And it surprises me because I'll tell you why in a moment. And it relates to Project 2025 and what they've said, okay? But now they aren't putting it off and waiting. Elon Musk is calling federal spending on Social Security benefits the big one to cut. He is advising President Trump on everything, and he's suggesting $500 billion to $700 billion in waste needs to be cut, and Social Security is where it can be cut. Again, this misunderstands what Social Security is and the fact that we've already paid into it. But, and of course, he cloaks it, and I'm going to play you his comments in a moment. He cloaks it in fraud and abuse that affects Social Security. There's very little fraud and abuse in Social Security. As I've mentioned to you before, it's one of the most efficient agencies in Washington. Tony, play for everyone, if you would, Musk's take on where Social Security is in the future of America.
The waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate. Because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing, if we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave and they'll lose voters.
Yeah. There's so much wrong with that and so many inaccuracies. It's going to take me just a second, but cut space explosion first, says Rick. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who lives off the dole. He's the corporate welfare queen of welfare queens, getting more government subsidies than you can even imagine. And those aren't enough for him. He grabs another government contract out of the grips of Verizon and says, they're waste, fraud, and abuse. It's wasteful. Verizon, their service isn't good. I'm going to take over that contract. And he grabs it for his company. This guy is a thief, okay? And what's happening there is completely, the last part of what he said is completely BS. I mean, it's all completely BS, but the last part doesn't even pass the smell test. There are no illegal immigrants voting illegally, okay? There are no undocumented workers voting illegally. There are none, okay? Just none. It's a complete load of crap. Why, and this is the part that doesn't pass the smell test, if you were in the country illegally, why would you want to participate in anything as official as a vote, knowing, even roughly, that you'll likely encounter officials of all sorts at the polling place? And you know how, perhaps roughly, you know how government handles voter fraud. In this country, we handle it extremely harshly. There is no incentive, if you're in the country illegally, to participate in the voting process. So we know that the last part of what he said is utter crap. Yet it's what's constantly being said, that sort of the illegal immigration issue that America endures and deals with constantly is some sort of voter recruitment program that the Democrats have. It's utter absurdity. Yeah. So there's that. The second thing, or perhaps the first thing, you put them in whatever order you want, is that Social Security doesn't affect the deficit at all. You can remove Social Security, it won't affect the deficit.
It's in a whole different pot, right?
Thank you. Yeah. It's already been paid into. Here's the answer if you view Social Security as not penciling out. It's as simple as raising the cap. The cap is 76,000. Increase it. Increase it 100,000. That's not even that much. Take it up to 400,000. So you're paying into Social Security all the way up to 400,000, to making $400,000 a year. Anything above 400,000, you don't have to pay Social Security on. That'll be a huge influx into the Social Security program. But these guys just won't do that. But the idea somehow that you would put Social Security on the chopping block the way Elon Musk has is extraordinary. And this is the last thing I'll say. If you follow Project 2025, Russell Vogt, who's really the guy, he's the architect, he's a writer of a bunch of Project 2025, and now he's running OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. He ran it the first time with Trump. If you follow him, he actually articulates the plan for Social Security, and it is to eliminate it or privatize it. And the idea is that you don't go after Social Security right away. You go after these other things like foreign aid, USAID, EPA, things that the public, and he writes about this, the public won't notice right away. When you want to dismantle the administrative state, you want to dismantle those things that the public won't notice immediately. And then you get to Social Security. So what Musk is doing is actually a deviation from the evil plan of Russell Vogt. He's putting Social Security right up front, talking about it all the time. That is not following the plan of Project 2025. Project 2025 was, we'll slowly boil the water, right? And the frog won't jump out. But
so we have Elon Musk to thank for his blatantness,
right.
For coming in with a sledgehammer and not going quietly under the radar, right?
Yeah. Peter Newton says with the $5 super chat, Project 2025 translator, fraud, waste, and abuse equals give money to blacks, Latinos, and women. How dare non-white men have money? Good day, sir. Yeah, exactly. I think there is a quality of, look, I mean, they view all of this as a giveaway, but it's truly ironic, and we got David Cay Johnston waiting. I'm going to get to him in a second, but it's truly ironic that this guy who is a corporate welfare queen, I mean, exists because of the U.S. government and U.S. government contracts and U.S. government subsidies. Leave aside contracts. Okay, I mean, talking about tax breaks. He exists because of it. The idea that he could be so tough on these government handouts, which are minuscule. I mean, it's just, and if you really want waste, fraud, and abuse, go across the Potomac to the Pentagon. There is no waste, fraud, and abuse like there is at the Pentagon. And of course, they're getting an increase. So what can you do? Smash the like button.
Smash it with your iron rod.
The truth is, you can do a lot, and hopefully things will be done. We'll discuss maybe some solutions. David Cay Johnston next as we continue. So I'm going to play a little bit of a longer sweeper, Tony. Okay, I'm warning you ahead of time. David Cay Johnston, you have about 60 seconds. So what do they used to say? Smoke him if you got him. Well, Mark Thompson Show.
Girl, you just woo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash it with your iron rod. Who's Mark Thompson?
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
What he's got going here is a situation.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
Ralph Nader just sent me a book. Did he send you one too?
I offer this sincere apology to you today.
Everything is going extremely well.
Call me a liar. Know what you call me?
You, sir, are a liar.
You are a cover-up artist, and you are a liar.
Liar, your pants are on fire!
Google told me.
Can you let him finish, sir?
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
No.
I'm going to tell you what I think.
What are the porn stars doing?
Do you have a secret now?
Isn't anybody but a weed?
It's 100% effective. How about that?
Say what?
There is no defense for my conduct.
I misspoke. I stand corrected. And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Time's up, mother effers.
Right on, everybody. Thank you for being here. Tuesday is my favorite day of the week. You get to talk to a Pulitzer Prize winner, the co-founder of DCReport.org. Oh, yeah, a best-selling author, has written extensively on Donald Trump, his rise, the making of Donald Trump, has all kinds of details that sort of play out and repeat themselves in the current incarnation of Donald Trump. He's now a professor at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. He's the great David Cay Johnston. Hi, David.
Hello, Mark.
David, I was talking about Social Security, and clearly Musk is advertising that and entitlement programs, as he calls them. He's advertising that as something that he wants to go after with the same hatchet that he's used on other government agencies.
Yeah, well, I think that's always been the plan here. And Russell Vought is quite right. You don't lead with that. Steve Bannon has warned that taking away Medicaid, taking away the lower rungs of Obamacare would be a big mistake because they benefit red states overwhelmingly compared to blue states. But that's always been the plan here. And I think there's another large aspect of the plan that hasn't gotten enough attention. Musk is shutting down an FAA, mostly in-house project to modernize and update and revise aviation maps. And if you've ever seen an aviation map, what pilots carry in those bags that they carry on and off the plane, boy, they are really complicated to look at. They require a great deal of knowledge of what you're seeing to make sense of them. He wants that to be turned over to one of his companies. Now, in the past, we would have just called this flat out corruption, but we have been immunized to that by the way issues have developed and been presented in the news now for some time. But, they can't run the IRS with half the people it has, but they could hire private corporations to replace the IRS. They can't run Social Security, which they would like to get rid of once, especially they have messed up the entire payment system But, oh, wait a minute, we have to hire private companies. And the general history of replacing government ownership with private ownership is higher costs. I've written about this at length. There have been a number of studies that have shown this. And if you think about it for a minute, for example, you have a municipal water system. This happened to people in the town of Felton, just outside Santa Cruz, where I grew up. If you replace a municipal water system with a private water system, they have to earn enough profit to pay taxes on their profits, and they have to earn a rate of return. Whereas the rate of return government needs is much smaller. They need enough to be able to update and replace the system as they go along and build up reserves. So inherently, unless it's badly managed, nonprofit utility should be more effective and efficient. And in the area of electricity, it's incredibly so. Nonprofit juice typically costs 15 to 30% less than for-profit juice. That is investor-owned or IOU utilities compared to municipal or cooperative utilities. And I think this is part of the scheme. It's to extract more money out of the government. It's so much easier, Mark, to make money by changing the government rule book than by winning in the competitive marketplace. That naturally people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, who really don't know how to make money, but know how to mine the treasury, gravitate in that direction.
So this is a really great point because it speaks to the architecture of what they're doing. And we've talked for years, literally, on this show about the privatization and how that's always the game. But now it's being pursued more aggressively and more quickly, I think, than we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime.
Well, if Social Security suddenly can't make payments, as the former commissioner just said he thinks will start happening within 90 days, maybe as little as 30, you can tell the headline and the announcement that's coming. Well, the government couldn't do this. That's why we need the private sector to step in. Never mind that we're the ones who throw sand in the gears.
There's no sleight of hand here. Break it, and then bring in a private company to, quote, fix it, that which was not broken.
And at the same time, don't fill out your government-required Office of Government Ethics forms. And if you do fill them out, don't have any staff to investigate you, and make sure that your person is the attorney general so that if you lied through your teeth, if you did file, nothing will happen to you.
In this environment, and I'm just seeing it through the chat, and we see it day after day, what to do, how can we push back, Democrats are doing nothing, etc. What would be in your playbook for making noise sufficient to maybe get through the rest of the noise?
Well, I think for the moment right now, you have to let Trump be Trump, LTBT. They'll screw up on their own, but they need to screw up enough that ordinary people pay a price for it. So, he's abandoned his promise that he would immediately lower grocery prices and eggs would be cheaper. He is taking other steps that are completely in line with Project 2025, which he insisted he knew nothing about, or on other days of the week. Well, there are parts of it I like and parts of it I don't like, because he can't keep his lies straight. And for a while, they need to sort of do their thing. I think the Democrats need to make a record. I thought it was terrific that the junior senator from Oregon, Merkley, asked two Trump witnesses, is Donald Trump a Russian asset? Now, if Donald Trump is a Russian agent is an arguable point, but is he an asset to the Russian? Of course he's an asset to the Russian government. I don't think that's disputable at this point. He spews Russian propaganda and he's taken Russia's side against Ukraine. That makes him, as a matter of indisputable fact, a Russian asset. I looked this morning in my New York Times and online at the Washington Post and Reuters and AP and all of these other news services I pay to get. Can't find a word about that from Senator Merkley's questions. So right in front of the eyes of Washington reporters, you have the question asked, and they don't cover it. This is the big part of the problem we have is the Washington Press Corps is operating under the historic rules of Washington, which had their pluses and their minuses. The ball game has changed and they're not evolving. And what happens if you don't evolve, whether you're a bird or a news organization, is eventually you evolve yourself out of existence.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you put it that way, because you're right. I mean, I just was seeing something, Oliver Darcy, I read his Substack, and there is a piece that he did about how the White House press corps is putting together, this coalition, and they're going to petition the White House about the way the media is being. There it is. U.S. Senator asks nominees if President Trump is a Russian asset. Yeah, it's that's in the London Economic. So again, it's not a mainstream. Not a mainstream publication that would then be picked up by MS, CNN, et cetera. But I thought that Darcy's note about what was happening with the White House press corps sort of dovetails with what you're saying, which is, hey, guy, they don't care about your coalition of journalists petitioning the White House. They don't care.
Right.
And they know that there's nothing you can do. It is their media machine now.
Right. And so what that means is that I think more journalists need to adopt what we did at DC Report, which we ran when I was publisher on a shoestring. I think our average for the 7 years I ran it was $3,000 a month of revenue. I mean, just nothing. And we focused on the public record. What was in the Federal Register? That's published every day by the U.S. government. It's proposals to change rules and public comments on those rules. What was in pieces of legislation or budgets? And there's too much Washington coverage that consists of, well, this is what my sources told me. Every day I read stories in the Wall Street Journal, even on finance, where I say to myself, this is a very readable story. The writer of the story has done a nice job of collecting quotes, and it's very clear the writer doesn't have a clue to what's going on at the level of principle and theory. It's all mechanical. If you want to get at this, you've got to get away from this mechanical racehorse, who's ahead in the bureaucracy business, and look at what is happening in the workings of the government. And the idea that nobody wants to read this, the answer to that is, well, then learn how to write it in a way that people are interested in. It was an old saying, a million deaths is a tragedy, but one death will cause people to cry and open their wallets. And so find examples of these things. Now, there's a very good story leading the New York Times this morning by the fellow who has my old job covering the IRS. And it's about how they want to eliminate half of the IRS. And there's a 64-year-old woman who had spent her career working for multinational companies and helping them, manipulate the tax code to their advantage. So now she's gone to work for the government to uncover this, and she finds a company international company typically makes $3 billion a year in profits. They've never been audited. So there's probably abundant opportunities to find revenue there. So what happened? Well, she and a lot of other people were thrown out the door because they don't want to find that. They want to tax the people listening to this show, but they don't want to tax themselves. They don't want to tax big companies. And controlling the IRS, they can do that. And they can do it in ways you can never tell because we have a law called 6103 that makes your tax returns secret. By the way, tax returns 101 years ago, in 1924, so the stories came out right now, 100 years ago, they were public record. I have all these front pages from the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, elsewhere. The lead story on the front page will say things like, John D. Rockefeller Jr. went to the Internal Revenue Service yesterday. It was called the Internal Revenue Bureau then, to file his tax return, and it showed an income of, gazillions of dollars, and he paid X less gazillion in taxes. And interestingly, he paid like 10 times what his father paid because his income was so much bigger. The original John D. Rockefeller.
Right.
I actually think there's no reason not to go back to making tax returns public, because the people who are in the digital businesses, Google and all of those related companies, they know how much you make. I live in a neighborhood where I know that houses sell for somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000. And you can adjust for the fact that housing is, Rochester, New York's a lot cheaper. They would be $5 million houses on the west side of LA.
Sure.
But we know what the total income is in the zip code I live in. We know how much of it is labor and how much of it's capital. So you can figure out the average. And this shouldn't be shocking anymore. My salary at DC Report was public. It was minimal, and it wasn't revealed only because we didn't have $50,000 to pay me. It took a few $1,000s. You had to have $50,000, I think, for them to reveal it. But my wife's salary has been public for almost our entire marriage. The school teachers, police officers, firefighters, their salaries, their pensions, those are all public.
That's interesting, David.
We'd have less tax cheating.
I mean, that's such a clever take on it. And the only reason I would, pause on it is because the vigilantism that sort of informed the politics of today, the way that people have been empowered and even encouraged to kind of, go after either by doxing or, as I say, just old-fashioned vigilante posses coming after people. I feel like too much information out there now. I view it as a real liability.
So let me address that and suggest a slight change to that. All right. First of all, we should get serious about doxing people. And, it's like all those spam phone calls you get. The electronic industries go, oh, there's no way we can track these phone calls. Really? Think of all the things you can do. You can't do it. No, you're not motivated to do it because there's no profit or government requirement in it. If you were told you have to do this or be fined $1,000 a phone call, they'd solve it incredibly fast. We could then say, you're not going to release your exact income, but we'll put out your category. So you're in the $100,000 to $125,000 group. You're in the $200,000 to $250,000 group. And here is the share of your gross income that you paid in income taxes. So your effective tax rate was, 10 cents on the dollar, 28 cents on the dollar, whatever it is. And then you would notice things like one of the first times an IRS agent was telling me sort of out of school, he was training a young person. They went to a restaurant, a coffee shop sort of place in Wall Street, and the company showed, almost no profit, which is typical, a modest salary. And as they're leaving from their last visit, a Bentley or Rolls Royce, I don't remember which, convertible pulls up, and a woman falling out of the top of her dress with a mink coat steps out, walks in the door of the restaurant, plants a big kiss on the owner. So they take the license plate down and they discover the guy actually lives in a mansion out in Long Island that he couldn't live on the income involved. Congress has prohibited that kind of audit. You are no longer allowed to do it. If somebody who says, I only make $25,000 a year as he walks onto his Gulfstream jet, the IRS is not allowed to investigate you. That is institutional corruption, and our government is full of institutional corruption, and we need to go after that. And if we survive Donald Trump and his others' efforts to become dictatorial, that I think is one of the first things we need to do. We need to scour the government for institutional corruption, which the founders were very worried about. And if you want to learn about it, Zephyr Teachout, a professor at Fordham Law, has an excellent book called Corruption in America. And if you care about this, it'll grab you right away. It's written to be understood by ordinary folks. You don't have to be a lawyer or a policy wonk. Corruption in America by Zephyr Teachout. It's like the paperback's like $10.
Yeah, Corruption in America. Got it. David, I'm going to get to Ukraine in a moment. So those who are, there's some messages in the chat. I very much want to talk to David about Ukraine. He cares very much about it and knows a lot about it, and we'll get to it in a second. But I don't want to, before we completely leave government, I just want to kind of tie up what's happening. I saw that there'll be a bunch of people let go from the CIA. I see a lot of people the intelligence community is being purged in many ways. This billionaire boys cabinet, they all seem to have a view of the future that involves the privatization of government and flushing all of these government workers. As we look at this playing field, I'm wondering what you prioritize. I mean, obviously, as we've said and kind of stipulated to, there's a privatization that's the end goal. In the meantime, the damage seems to be reaching kind of a critical mass when people don't get their Social Security checks, et cetera. I wonder if you can speak to this.
Well, the things they're doing, like messing with Social Security's software code, especially the source code, that will blow up in their faces sooner or later, but I think they intend it to. I mean, I think that's part of the purpose. And I won't be surprised if Elon Musk down the road or somebody else around Trump, not Trump himself, says, well, it's a good thing that these systems don't work because we just can't afford this. We can't afford it. We've got to stop it. And they don't care that people who are old will be evicted or go hungry or die of starvation. And they've told us that because they don't care about the people overseas who are having their viral diseases, of which AIDS is only one, suppressed because of the medications we sent. I think that the greatest priority and concern should be what they're doing to national security. They're getting rid of experienced FBI counterintelligence agents, and that's the counterintelligence is the FBI's job by and large. The CIA, get the James Bond movie nonsense out of your head. The CIA is mostly an analytical organization. And by getting rid of people who aren't white, straight males like you and me, they are endangering our national security. If you want to know what's going on in Iran, for example, you need to have people who are native speakers of Pashto and other languages, Farsi, etc. And we don't have those people. The whole attack on DEI is not just white supremacy, it's literally putting us in danger because of that. And I have a little suggestion I've been saving for your show here. Okay. We can't say DEI, right? I mean, they are so determined. They removed the pictures of the plane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima because the pilot, Paul Tibbets, named it for his mother, Enola Gay. That's how ridiculous this is. They're banning the word woman. So DEI, you'll get in trouble for it. Okay, fine. Let's come up with some new language. How about bold, diverse, deep, and eclectic? Bold, deep, and eclectic. Let's go around the corner about this. And sure. Every university in this country, there's lots of traffic going on about this among the professoriate and others. They all recognize that the Trump administration is going to come after them at some point. They just cut $400 million from Columbia over its alleged anti-Semitism. And I was there when one of the demonstrations was taking place. I was speaking to a UN conference that was held at Columbia. And this was not the kind of demonstration I covered in the late 60s and early 70s in America on campuses like Stanford and San Francisco State. But it was not materially different than lots of student protests. And Donald wants to shut down protests. You shouldn't be allowed, he says, to write things about me I don't approve of. Well, the same thing applies to protests. He considers them illegitimate. All dictators consider protests illegitimate. And people need to wake up. Donald is our de facto dictator. He's just consolidating power, and he's still working on it.
And so I think you've heard David offer some solutions. Some of them do involve independent media getting some of the word out about this. I mean, the dictatorial nature of what's happening. I mean, that all needs to be, I think, reported in even more aggressive ways. To Ukraine, there comes this. Phineas says, please ask David Cay Johnston about Musk giving the GPS coordinates of the Ukraine Starlink transponders to Russia and Putin.
Well, several years ago, after the war began in 2022, Musk cut off Ukrainian access to Starlink. We're clearly operating as Putin's helper here against the Ukrainian people. And we're not in a state of war, so you can't be a traitor, but it is treasonous behavior that you're seeing by Donald Trump and Elon Musk. We're changing the whole world's orientation right now from America, champion of liberty and justice for all of our flaws, to America, champion of tyrants and suppression of freedom and supporting murderous dictators. And that will have very serious long-term consequences. Even if somehow tomorrow we swept away Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, the impact of this, the recognition that the United States of America can be run by unprincipled, incompetent, and dishonest people, that's never going away. Never. 500 years from now, it will be with us no matter how the world is. And so I think this is an extraordinarily serious matter. Hopefully the Europeans are going to step up. They don't have sufficient militaries to do all that we were doing. We have the fanciest toys. But the Ukrainians have proven so resilient, and their tactics have proven so smart, like these drones they're building from off-the-shelf equipment to drop bombs and see soldiers. There's new video out in the last 2 days of Russian soldiers who, when they're captured, they tell the Ukrainians that Ukrainians don't have to threaten to torture them or anything. They tell them right off, well, you know, they grabbed me off the street. They forced me into the army. They said, here's a gun. They showed me how to load the gun and how to point and shoot it. And then they put me in the front. Surprise, surprise, those guys die like flies when they get to the front. And there are scenes of Russian armored vehicles, when they realize the Ukrainians are onto them, turning around and rushing back into the trees, because when they're out in the open, they can be hit with the drone bombs, of soldiers dropping their weapons and throwing their arms up. The war is going very badly for Putin, and this is exactly the moment when Putin needs Donald Trump to help him, because otherwise he's just not getting there. And of course, by lifting the sanctions, now he can get access to things. The Europeans can seize all the Russian money that's in European banks. It's something like $300 billion. Give it to the Ukrainians. They may have to go to the black market, but they can get lots of weaponry if they have that kind of money. That's one step.
And that's being openly spoken about by the French, French president. Yeah.
Yes. I do TV in India all the time. They have a CNN equivalent there. And I'm on there sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. But they have been getting super cheap oil from Russia. They've been able to buy it for about $48 a barrel. The world price in recent months has been a little over 80. Well, if you lift the sanctions, they're going to spend more for that oil. That's not good for their economy. And unfortunately, it helps Putin. So keeping the sanctions on about oil, even if America drops out, the Europeans can do a lot about that. So Europe's resolve is important. I spent 2 hours today being interviewed for Baltic State Television, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. And I said, you know, I expect if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, he'll need a year or 2 to rebuild his military, which has been much more than decimated. It's been 90%ed almost. But his tanks are going to roll into your country. And the host, who was a very smart guy, an ethnic Russian, said, oh, yeah, no, that's what's going to happen next. Because they're small and they can be captured very easily. And there is a large ethnic Russian population in all 3 countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. There's long-term consequences. We need to think not about today and tomorrow and a month from now. We need to be thinking about what life will be like 5 years from now, 25 years from now, 50 years from now, if we don't get a handle on this. And it seems that the Europeans, particularly the Danes, the Germans, the French, the British, and the Poles, they get this.
I also think that what you're noting, the things that the United States used to stand for, democracy, freedom, pushback against authoritarianism, that's clearly all changed. And I just don't know when you get that back. But to your point, front page of the New York Times today, I'm looking at it, Russian forces appear stalled and exhausted is the headline. I mean, you have Trump running to their rescue at the time in this conflict where they're really teetering. The Russian army is teetering. I get it. Both sides are carved up. But the idea somehow that the Russians are dominating, which was the rap that they were giving Zelensky. You guys are done. You know, they're gonna crush you anyway. Let's get to a peace. That's just not really a reflection of the reality.
No, and Donald has literally spoken almost word for word Kremlin propaganda, you know, that you started the war, Ukraine, etc. And the argument that, well, Ukraine wanted to join NATO, therefore they had to be invaded. You know, that's like, gee, my wife didn't close the door of the refrigerator, therefore I need to kill her for ruining the food in the refrigerator. I mean, it's so ridiculously out of proportion. Putin is very vulnerable right now. And, you know, Joe Biden made a major error here. And we need to own that and make it clear. Biden was deeply steeped in international relations. He chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for years. He bravely went and confronted Milosevic during the Bosnia schizophrenia war and could have been killed, and told him, knock off these genocidal activities where they were killing whole villages, or you're going to die in a prison in the Netherlands, which is what happened in the end. He went to a prison in the Netherlands. But Biden gave out intelligence information, which I've never seen happen before in the history of the country. Information they felt wasn't compromising because we gathered it from things like the Russians don't have encrypted communications, or to the degree they do, they're useless, and showed that they were preparing to invade in about 5 or 6 months, as they did, Ukraine. What he should have done then wasn't this little incremental stuff he kept doing and ratcheting up. He should have said, we are immediately going to ship a gigantic amount of weaponry to Ukraine. I am sending over our very best field advisors. We will provide everything that is needed to repel this invasion, except American soldiers firing weapons. And had he done that, had he said, and by the way, we're bringing Ukrainian pilots to America to learn how to fight F-16s. We're going to give them 100 of them. And those things cost over $100 million each. Somebody can look up the number, but it's enormous.
Right.
If they had done all of that in the beginning, Putin wouldn't have gotten anywhere. He has a Potemkin army. He's down to having donkey carts bringing food and supplies to the front. So if the Europeans really step up right now, if they can develop the resolve to do that, I think that Putin will be pushed back, but they got to really step up. And if you're thinking I'm a warmonger, please believe I'm not. It's the last thing I want. My view is that there are wars that people should put their life on the line for. I'm the son of a 100% disabled veteran of World War II, whom I watched die every day I was growing up until I was 20, and he couldn't carry on anymore. And the standard I've always had is, am I willing to die for this war? As a father, am I willing to give up one of my 3 sons for this war? As a grandfather, am I willing to give up one of my 5 grandsons? And if I'm not, then no. We don't need to fight the Russians in this war. The Europeans don't need to fight it. The Ukrainians can do it, but they have to have the weaponry and, most importantly, the electronic communications and intelligence. And that's where the conduct of Elon Musk is just beyond the pale and establishes beyond any doubt that he is an enemy of freedom and democracy. He is, like his maternal grandparents, if not literally, at least in mindset, a Nazi.
I was just talking to someone today who said that the Musks of the administration, of which there are many, the billionaire boys cabinet and the crew, including Trump, have to be called out as Nazis, and because that is the word that has to get out there. I mean, because this is that. So it's interesting that you chose that word.
Well,
I
mean, I always want us to be hesitant about these things, but keep in mind that when he changed Twitter to X, the ASCII symbol for X is H, and it's understood by American neo-Nazis to be a subterfuge to say Nazi. We saw him do the
Nazi salutes. I mean, he's doing the Nazi salutes like you and I are shaking hands.
And when the White House and others say, oh, that's nonsense, that's not what he did. Gee, how come on the right they're saying that and Musk hasn't protested that, oh, no, that's completely wrong. It was something else. And even if you want to argue it was a Praetorian salute from ancient Rome, that's not any better. That doesn't improve the situation. So what people shouldn't do, Mark, is give up heart. Okay, we survived the invasion of 1812 by the British and the White House being burned. We survived the Civil War. We can survive this. That doesn't mean we will. We didn't have to win World War II. And you want to see an alternative history of that? There's the novel by the late Philip Roth about if the Nazis had won, and then there's that TV series, The Man in the High Castle.
Sure.
And those will give you good examples of what could have happened. So people need to be brave and they need to be resolute. They need to be supporting candidates so that this next Congress, we get a majority in the House and hopefully in the Senate. And they need to be standing up for the values that make America what it is. Our country is an idea and an ideal, and we haven't reached the ideal and probably never will because the goalposts will move as we get better. But, saying we're going to be all white supremacy, that only white men should be getting benefits and they should run the government, and stopping cancer research in progress. There's a cartoon I put up on my Facebook and B-Sky pages of Trump with his little hat on saying, here's this child who has cancer and look what we're doing to save his life. And then it's a little child who says, I'm on cancer medications. Please don't stop my research. And in foul language, it tells him to F himself.
No, that's exactly what, when he used that little kid as a prop, I thought, the other side of that, I discussed it on the show, is that the programs to address that cancer and others, they're completely being undermined and stopped. We're witnessing what would have happened had Lindbergh been president during World War II.
Yeah.
That's a really good comparison to
That's
President
a very good comparison, and that's the point of Philip Roth's novel. That and Roth, among his generation, Updike and the other John Irving and others, he was unusual among them in that the older he got, the better his novels got. He didn't rest on his laurels. He didn't get flabby. He got better and better.
This is the very last question for you, because I got to let you go. Michael D says, please ask David, why is Trump on Putin's leash? Why is Trump on Putin's leash? Compromised, love for dictators, or is it business opportunities in Russia and Russia carries Trump's debt or other?
Well, all of those are true. The Russians have been courting Donald as a government since 1987, and Russians as folks since at least 1983. Do I think they have compromising material on him? Yeah. I mean, I don't know that the P-tape story has any truth to it whatsoever, but Donald's behavior, there's lots of things like, how many Americans know, as I do, that Donald was partners for years with one of the biggest cocaine traffickers in America, and it's all in the public record, but it's never made the mainstream news except for one passing line in the New York Times that was kind of obscure. Donald, of course, believes in dictatorial actions. Donald really does believe, and I came to this conclusion long ago, that he is the only person who can or should be president because everyone else is an idiot, because that's how he thinks. As Eric said in 2008, the second son, we're getting all the financing we need out of Russia. And we know from the Reuters investigation of who bought apartments from Trump that Russians paid super premium prices for Trump apartments all over the place. So I think they found 135 examples of above market sales. And on the debt issue, why is Donald Trump allowed Musk to upstage him as he did in the White House with the 4-year-old child? Well, Donald owes about $600 million in the 2 New York civil suits, the E. Jean Carroll defamation case and the fraud case. And he doesn't have, as best we know, $600 million. Of course, he hasn't filed his required ethics statement and financial disclosure, so we don't know anything. But I don't have any reason to think he's got that kind of money. One has to wonder, is he somehow directly or indirectly in hawk to Elon Musk? The insurance company that put up the bond, we don't know, there isn't a back-to-back transaction there where they put up the bond because Elon Musk guaranteed it through some other mechanism.
I see.
And so long as the Republicans control Congress, we have no chance of finding out the truth about that. Whether that could be, I'm speculating here, let me be clear, but Donald Trump doesn't let other people outshine him, but he does it with Musk and he does it with Putin. And that suggests to me, from my knowing him for almost 37 years, there's something we're not seeing that if we saw it would instantly say, oh, okay, that makes sense. So,
well,
anyway.
It is, it is the source of speculation, I think, at this point, but the picture is a grim one. I love our visits, and I love that you actually today, in all of this, have given us a little bit of hope. Canada has a larger GDP than Russia, yet Trump treats Russia like an economic superpower, says depressed Canadian. Yeah.
I may have said this last week. If not, people should know this because it's kind of funny. Trump's executive orders are full of typos and misspellings and bad grammar. And I've yet to see a story pointing that out because I've never seen a presidential document in my life that wasn't letter perfect. Trump imposed an extra 10% tariff on energy from Canada. So if they send crude oil or natural gas across the border, gasoline, coal, there's an extra 10% tariff, except for one source of electricity that drives Donald crazy, and that's wind turbine electricity. It's not in the list. So even though it's somewhere between 1% and 3%, depending on where you are at the border, of the electricity that we buy from Canada, the wind turbines that supposedly cause cancer, kill whales, kill birds, it's not in. And that's a good example of how they don't really know what they're doing. They're a bunch of ideologues. They're not managers. They're not executives. So see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, David Cay Johnston. Thanks, David. Good
Take
seeing
care.
you. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, thanks, everybody. Everybody who participated in David's, we try to get to a few comments. A lot of people, I think, with great questions for David. Yeah. Tony has that crude cartoon, but I think it's, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but yeah, we're going to pass on it probably. I mean, the point is made. Yeah. I can't hear Tony, but if I could, I'm sure he'd be saying the same.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony. I just wasn't feeling. I was like, I can if you want me to, but otherwise.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thank you, David Cay Johnston. Eugenio de Arnal with a $5 super sticker. Love it. Thank you, sir.
Big shout out.
And a Noe Marie $2 super chat. Katie for governor. She likes that. Katie Porter. Don't go away, says Linda Galdieri. Thank you, Linda, for the $20 super sticker or super chat. Is that? Sorry, super chat. Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I certainly intend to be here until I can no longer. But we do concern ourselves with the future of the platform and the future of shows and the way shows like this are clearly being suppressed in the algorithm on some level. Algorithms are changing, and we worry about the ways in which it's being tweaked to suppress information and things that kind of go up against the governmental line. Organics, so with a $10 super sticker. Thank you for the super sticker, Organic.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. But that makes the achievement of the 110,000 subscribers even more impressive, as we have been able to rise to at least that. Did I just see a ponytail on Mark Thompson? No, you did not. I did not have a ponytail. I have, maybe the hair isn't down and back enough. I don't know. It might be popping up or something. It might be, I might have maybe I didn't brush my hair sufficiently, but there's no ponytail. I don't think you'll ever need to worry about that. Mark is right, says whatever. I am, I don't know what you're referring to, but of course it is true.
Yeah.
I am right. Thank you for finally getting the word out, whatever. We need a little more whatever on this show, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. Kim, how are you? Exactly.
Kim, how are you?
Instead of constantly up my A, why don't you just give me a little whatever?
I blame you.
Mark is right. Oh.
I'm the one who put the star by that comment, okay? So
okay, thank you. All right, well, there you go. All right. Now, we need a palate cleanser to the politics, the dim future, the fact that you'll need all the bargains that this guy talks about. He's always telling you how to get a good deal. You'll need them because the economy's about to go into the tank. I don't know where he is. I think he's on the road somewhere. He's always on the road.
He's a traveling man.
He's a traveling. He travels more than that guy in The Fugitive. What was his name? And he was being chased by Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the Fugitive's name?
The one-armed man?
The Fugitive's name. They were looking for the one-armed man who was the real killer.
Yeah.
Anybody know what was the Fugitive's name who they were looking for? Richard Kimball. Who said Richard Kimball? Depressed Canadian. Yes, nice. That's right. Very well done, Richard Kimball. This guy is the host of Photo Walks TV. I like to make him wait a little bit. That's why we have him there, and he's hating life right now and hating me. How about it for Jefferson Graham, everyone? Yeah.
Love that ponytail, my friend.
I do not have a ponytail and never will.
Looks really good.
There's nothing wrong with it. I just can't sell that look. The Haight-Ashbury in 1968 look, can't quite make that work.
I used to have the hair, but I never had a ponytail. So there.
Yeah. Did your dad have a ponytail? I feel like he could
never had a ponytail.
No. Jerry Graham was his dad, a very famous guy in the San Francisco Bay Area. Jefferson Graham, not as famous as his dad.
No.
Am I right? No.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm just telling it straight.
Yeah.
But
that's the way it is.
Jefferson Graham has embraced the new medium and helped us get this show going. And so we share our new plaque that we got for 100,000 subscribers. We have 111,000 subscribers, and they sent us a plaque, and I share it with you, sir.
The play button, the play plaque. Can I have a few thousand of those, Mark?
You do pretty well. You do pretty well.
To answer your question, I'm in San Diego right now. I'm at the fabulous Sheraton Harbor Hotel in my room, and it's raining outside, and that kind of hinders your shoot, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Jeff does a show that involves all these cool locations and cool ways to shoot them and all this sort of thing. But yeah, rain will get in the way of that. What can you share with our audience today? Oh, great, Jefferson Graham.
Okay, well, let's start with very quickly on what do you do when it's raining and you're out doing photography. The great thing about smartphones that I think everybody who's in the audience today has one, they're water resistant. You know, when I was growing up, I would hide my camera under my sweater or coat, and I'd go crazy because the rain would ruin it. But your phones are water resistant, and you're just fine and dandy. You can go outside and shoot. It might get a little hard. The LCD might not be as responsive, but you can use the volume button. So yeah. I've gotten some great shots in the rain, not today, but on other days.
Teacher Lori says you get great shots in the rain, and the lens hood can help in the rain. I don't know if you have
it's hard to get a lens hood for an iPhone.
Yeah, that's exactly. A lot of the stuff that Jeff does, and this is the virtue of it, is stuff you can shoot on your iPhone. So he just shoots with an iPhone and an Android, and you don't really have lens hoods with those things.
And of course, the GoPros are waterproof. So if you buy
but you still get water on the lens, which it can be waterproof in the fact that it's not destroying the technology, but it does destroy the picture.
Just wipe it off.
Yeah, wipe it off. All right.
Yeah. So that's that. The other thing is we've joked a lot about Siri, Apple's supposedly chatty personal assistant. It was going to get better this year, and it was going to be more responsive and more talkative and give you better answers. And Apple confirmed last week that no, it didn't. Nope, sorry, couldn't get it finished. They announced this last June at the Worldwide Developers Conference and said this new Siri was going to be out of this world. And then when they put out a new iPhone in September, it wasn't there. And they said, well, it'll be out in October. Wasn't there. Then they said it'll be out in January. Wasn't there. And here we are in March. And now they're saying probably not until next year.
That's a little off-brand for Apple. They're usually a little bit more together than this.
Some of the stories I've read suggest that they may have to start from scratch and start all over again.
Wow.
And I think by that point, it will all be living with ChatGPT. I am amazed every day at how good ChatGPT is and how it's getting so much better by the day. And I'll just be using that, because that's what I use at this point. It's easier for me. Go ahead.
I'm reading a Cameo is asking about Siri. Will Siri be named Chatty Cathy? Maybe renamed? No.
I would predict that they will rename Siri. But
they're starting from scratch.
It will not be Chatty Cathy.
It will not be Cameo. I'm sorry. So it's kind of a bust. The Apple, there's Chatty Cathy. Chatty Cathy, I thought, would have had more of an enduring quality. Are you, as a tech person, aren't you surprised they didn't kind of reincarnate Chatty Cathy in some kind of tech way?
Yeah, I'll also tell you, I don't meet a lot of Cathys anymore. In this generation, you don't see Kathy and June and Jane. You don't see any Janes anymore, right?
Yeah. No, you're right.
You see Marks. I see some Marks. I see.
Yeah, Marks. That's biblical.
Still see David and Michaels, right? Yeah. You get those.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's biblical usually has an enduring quality. And what else do you have for us? Oh, great one.
Chrome, the Google Chrome browser, that is the world's most popular browser. The Department of Justice announced that they want Google to get rid of it, to shed it. And you have to think about what that means. I use Chrome. You're a DuckDuckGo guy, right?
No, I use Chrome. I use Chrome. I use Chrome. I do.
Yeah.
I use Safari. The Apple people in my life who are pushing Apple have got me on Safari more, but I really like Chrome. Chrome seems to know me. You know what I mean?
I like Chrome. I use a password manager called Dashlane, and it works really well with Chrome. It does not work well with Safari. With Safari, I'm still typing nonstop passwords all day long, and Dashlane, with Dashlane on Chrome, I don't have to do that. So I like Chrome. And I like Google. I have a Gmail account and in Google Drive, and I write everything in Google Docs, so it's all connected. But if there isn't a Chrome, I'll still go to Google Docs on Safari.
Well, that's the point. But you can still, when you say there isn't a Chrome, they want divestiture, or they want closing down.
They want divestiture.
Yeah, exactly. They want to do.
Who's going to buy it? What are you going to get?
Well, you get a brand that a lot of people already are on board with, and you can have it interlock with all the things you're talking about, Google Docs, et cetera. I think I could see it being of value.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is there was yet another tech conference last week called the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, where they introduced a whole bunch of new tech gadgets.
And you didn't go to that? That's amazing to me.
No, I didn't go. But most of the things there are by Chinese companies and Asian companies that you've never heard of. The big one that sort of stuck out was a new solar-powered laptop from Lenovo. Okay, sounds pretty good, right?
I guess.
Next question, Mark. When's the last time you took your laptop outside and sat on the deck and did anything with it?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
You can't see.
Yeah.
You can't see anything.
Right. So if the sun that powers it is the very thing that's going to make it unworkable.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I guess you could sit in the cold, but you need the sun rays, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I got for you today.
I love it. This from the audience, just give me the truth, says, and Chrome add-ons are open for spying and corruption. Ah, interesting. Hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah. Congratulations on 110K. That's amazing. Could you tell us for a second before I go, what do you attribute it to? Because I remember when we crossed 10,000 and we were so excited, and it wasn't less than a year ago.
That's a good question, and Kim might be able to help with that.
Kim, how are you?
If we should go back and look to see, I don't know how you do it, to actually track it, just out of curiosity. It was a slow rollout. I mean, we really, I shouldn't say struggle, but I was, sweating. Getting to 5,000 was a big deal. And we were there for a while, and then we were punching through 10,000. That was, remember, we were just looking for 11,780. Remember that was it, because that was
a certain number. I think once you get 50, 75,000, then they start pushing it to more people, and it starts showing up in recommended shows for you. And then all of a sudden, now we're getting 1,000 subscribers a day. And I like to think it's our content, but it could have more to do with, how many subscribers we have. And now we're just on a roll.
Tony,
algorithm.
Tony knows. Tony.
Thanks, Tony. I'd say it's two things. It's regularity breeds loyalty. We're always here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. That kind of consistency just builds that way. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we had after the election, kaboom in subs.
Yeah,
too.
It's true. We ask questions about the election. We ask questions about the election. We ask questions that I think that need to be asked, and those things do bring viewers in. And there is this. Rich says it's Mark's sunny disposition, which I think is
there you go.
It's also cutting up segments, and some segments really kick off, right?
Sure. I mean, I do a lot of work to try to build shorts and videos, and we're even going to do more. Tony has really been great, and this is something that is important for the audience, so it's not just kind of inside the show, but I like to share what we're doing, because I feel the audience sort of has ownership in part on the show. Tony's talked about the fact that on the weekends, we should do a remix, and we are going to do a remix, meaning a chunk of David Cay Johnston, a chunk of some of the other guests we've had, and a chunk of even conversations that I've just had with the audience.
TLDR, too long, didn't watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Give you the
Thank
short
you.
version.
So we're going to start doing that. I almost had one ready to go this past weekend, but it's a lot of work. And that's the last thing. I would say it's taken a lot of work. This isn't easy. I don't just show up and flip the mic on. Mm-hmm. It's everybody working. Kim's working hard. I mentioned Tony's working hard. Albert, everybody is doing their part. And I think that really matters. And I've got Courtney now working to help book the show, et cetera. So it's a big lift, and I'm really proud of what we've done. And of course, we could not do it without the audience. The audience has made it happen, man. We would not be here without everybody who is a Patreon and PayPal supporter and contributes with the super stickers and super chats. It's really great. It does take money
amazing
to
success
drive it.
story in such a short period of time.
Yeah, thank you, pal. Thank you. Well, Jeff, last thing as we say goodbye, I'm reminded of you sort of babysitting me through the process as I was getting screwed over by the tech lords, and you literally would screen share with me while I had them on the line, and I will never forget it. You really helped me through some of the early stages, which are quite frustrating. So thank you again for that. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
You can find Jefferson Graham surveying the country, surveying other countries. He's everywhere. He's here. He's there. From the north to the south, the east to the west. It's Photo Walks TV, the YouTube series. Check him out. That sexy fool. Jefferson Graham, he'll be with us here on Tuesdays until the end of time. Jefferson Graham, thank you, sir. See you next week. All right, my friend.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Good visit with Jeff from a hotel room in San Diego. Google Chrome is built on the open source browser named Chromium, says West Theory. Tony, do you know much about Chromium? I feel like you're the most qualified to comment on these.
It's all Google, though, isn't it?
It's all Google, right?
Yeah, it's all
that's
Google.
right. Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Built on their engine, and yeah.
I was searching for David Cay Johnston, and I found him here about a year ago and stuck around for the rest, says Peter Newton. Wow, that's an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter is a great contributor, and I believe is our leading outpost in the desert Southwest of America. Scott Rittenberg with a $20 super chat. Mark's success is consistency, awesome lineup, mixed with tons of fun, making the show one of the best on YouTube. Wow. I love that.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. That's really cool of you to say. Well, thank you. And you do get crossover traffic from other channels. Who said that? Audrey? Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I look at, where you're coming from a lot of the time. They share that information, so it helps us a little bit. But more than anything, we try to sort of be true to, our mission. And so we'll continue to try to do that. And believe me, I'm the toughest. Just wear a big sombrero. It will shield your iPhone from the rain, says BW.
There you go.
Well done. I'm the biggest critic of myself, so I'm always going, God, why did you ask? Why didn't you ask this question? Why didn't you ask that question? Why did you say it like this? Why did you say it like that? So it's a very, I'm hoping to refine even myself over the years. Pam Pierce, the Philippine ex-president Duterte, is on a plane to The Hague after the ICC warrant arrest. Yeah, so Duterte is wanted by the same world court in The Hague that wants who? Anybody? Putin. Putin is wanted by the world court also. Netanyahu is wanted by the world court. But Duterte was apprehended and is now being sent to The Hague. Duterte's, Google this, I think it's
drug.
No,
he killed a lot of people regarding.
Oh, no, I know why
drugs.
Duterte is being detained. I wanted to, but thank you for filling it in because I didn't say it.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe his son or daughter is now running the Philippines.
Google it.
Who is and now I think Duterte's, I want to say son is running the Philippines now, or is president, or tried to become president. I'm weak on my Philippine stuff. I think of late. I want to say it's his son, maybe. But
Google it.
Okay, we'll Google it. Anyway, so that's him. That's Duterte himself. Yeah, that we got a picture up. Anyway, I'm looking in the chat because usually the chat knows the answer to these things. But in any case, Kim.
Yes.
I've had a great time.
I have too. It's been lovely.
Yeah, but no, not Imelda Marcos. Everyone, that was different. But Duterte's relative is very much involved. Maybe even the daughter. Thank you. Public Domain says It's the daughter, right? I knew it was son or daughter, who's the vice president. That's it. Okay. Yeah. So do I get partial credit for that? I thought that was pretty good that I knew that. Yeah. All right. The news, which we love to get from Kim, we get it when we can, but today we cannot.
Today we cannot.
It is running. We're running a little bit too late. Ivanka Duterte. Thank you, Rev. That's exactly what I was thinking of there. That's her name. Yeah. Bryce Cooley on the way out says the Democrats' only chance at winning is going for the moderate strategy. That's exactly what Gavin Newsom is doing during the Charlie Kirk interview. Of course, you are right about Gavin's strategy. I don't know about the strategy of the Democrats. I mean, they're going to lean in on DEI and whatever, the opposition, assuming, by the way, fair elections. Okay, I'm putting that whole question to the side because I think it's a real question mark. But anyway, Bryce Cooley is saying that that's what Gavin Newsom is doing with the Charlie Kirk interview. As you may, if you're just tuning in today, and I'd made this comment, I think maybe a day or so ago. I guess it had to be yesterday. I thought it was a mistake for Newsom to do this podcast with Charlie Kirk. I don't know about the podcast itself. I think reasonable minds can differ as to whether or not Gavin Newsom should be doing a podcast, but I can see the advantage. I mean, it is a platform, or maybe he gets the word out and maybe it catches some viral oxygen and whatever. But having Charlie Kirk on legitimizes Kirk. He is an alt-right, extreme right voice in America. Some of the things he pushes are loathsome. And the demonization of immigrants and all of these things that really are the kind of toxic shell that they wrap a lot of their hate in. I see it all played out with Charlie Kirk. So you bring on Charlie Kirk, you have this conversation with him, and before you know it, you're kind of agreeing on these questions of should boys be playing in girls' sports? That was the big thing. And then he takes that interview and he runs it on his platform, and he chops it up even to kind of comment on that which you've just done, Gavin Newsom, with Charlie Kirk. Many more people see it on his platform than see it on your platform, and he gets the chance to kind of crap all over you. I mean, I don't know, again, if you have seen what he said, but he essentially rejects you as another Democrat, but gives you credit for having him on your show, and then finds the one area of crossover, which is that boys playing in girls' sports stuff that you agreed with him on. So I see that as a huge net loss for you. You got the pop off of having Charlie Kirk, but ultimately the actual movement of thought and ideas, I give that to Kirk. So I'd be very careful with this stuff.
If you're saying, though, as in the past, that it was that commercial that was so powerful during the election that against trans people that inspired people to vote for Trump, then maybe Newsom sees that and he thinks, okay, well, America isn't on board with the trans thing. How can I let them know that I'm not that guy for someone with presidential aspirations? Maybe it's by design.
Well, two things. First, the thing that I thought was so effective about that commercial wasn't just the trans thing. It was that your taxpayer money, Kamala Harris, wants to use your taxpayer money for illegal immigrants in prison to get surgery to change their gender. In that 30 seconds was everything. It's not just the trans. It's illegal immigrants, your taxpayer money, her, okay? So, but you're right about the fact that it was essentially the trans thing is like the issue in America if you pay attention to the media. Of course, it's not the issue in America. No. There are a million other issues, and witness the free fall that the economy is about to go through and the way government is being dismantled, all because they ran an effective spot about trans people. What I would say is, as a politician, and Newsom is a gifted politician, this is the second point, you can handle it in many ways without completely tapping out on the issue, okay? It is a complicated, nuanced issue. And changes do need to be made about the way in which boys are playing in girls' sports, if you want to think of it that way. I mean, that's a huge reducto on it, but I mean, I think it's maybe a fair reducto. But all I'd say is Newsom is more skilled than tapping out on it. I wouldn't tap out on it. You know, I would lean in on it. I mean, I'd address the fact that it is nuanced. In any case, I saw the Kirk presence as a loss right out of the chute, because Charlie Kirk doesn't sound like just a blithering moron. He makes his points. He's a right-wing ideologue. And this guy, I mean, I watched him when he was a little guy like me, you know, with just a small following. And now he's holding a conference. You know, he's the guy who organizes this big alt-right conference every year. And, of course, he's a huge mouthpiece for the alt-right. So, Bryce Cooley says, in response to what I've just said, Gavin Newsom is not perfect. He's not as progressive as Bernie Sanders, but he has the charisma to win at a national scale, especially if he picks a running mate from rural America like Andy Bashir. Maybe. I mean, one of the things that you've seen Newsom do positively, in my view, is take on the Sean Hannitys of the world. I mean, he ate Sean Hannity for breakfast. It was unbelievable. When you talk about a tap out, Sean Hannity's going, well, we're out of time. And Newsom's like, hey, I got time. If you're out of time for me, don't be, because I can stay here all day. So I feel he represents the positions that he feels will be politically expedient, to put it that way, and he does it fairly well. But anyway, I love it. I can't get enough of it. But
the Mark Thompson Show.
Sadly, we have to wrap up.
Already?
This is a live show, and we will be back tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the East, 11 o'clock in the West, and we hope you join us from wherever you are live and participate in our chat. You can always see the show in delay, and we will break out a bunch of videos today. The conversation with David Cay Johnston, among those things we will get to later in the day if you missed any of it. I did want to mention that tomorrow we've got John Rothman and Anthony Davis from the Midas Touch Network, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but Midas Touch, they just overtook Rogan and everybody else as the #1 independent platform that or independent news media.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you, Shadow. Please.
Bye-bye.
Yes. So they're #1. So we'll see if he's got an attitude tomorrow. Kim's got the after party going. Until tomorrow, everyone. Thank you. And we're out of time. Bye-bye.